Mr. Chow, nice to meet you. It's my pleasure to have an opportunity to make interview with you.
Not at all. I've heard a great deal about you, so I'm just thrilled to meet you.
Thank you. Now, although born in Taipei, Shanghai is actually an original hometown for you and your family, and welcome back Shanghai. I know this time you have visited the Expo. Now, what's your impression to it, and how did you think the Expo will influence the future of Shanghai?
I think the Shanghai Expo is spectacular, and I really encourage overseas guests to come and visit Shanghai Expo. It is a spectacular display of pavilions, buildings, exhibits that are so creative, beautiful, and futuristic looking. Shanghai Expo is going to be like the Beijing Olympics of 2008. It will catapult Shanghai into the consciousness of the world community and demonstrate to the world the modern city that Shanghai is today and the modern nation that China is on the route to become.
Now, when you were a little girl, did your father always describe to you how the city looked like and kept telling you some older story about the Shanghai?
My father, throughout the times that I was growing up, told all of us, his children, many, many stories about his life in Jiading, his years of study at Shanghai, 交通大学. And so my father and my mother have always talked about China and their life here in China to their children.
Did you keep some traditions of living habits and customs in your family a long time?
Of course. For example, when we have meals, and all the children wait for my father to sit down. My father doesn't lift his chopsticks, we don't eat.
Or what do your parents expect you most always?
My parents are very progressive. They never put pressure on us, but they always expected us to do our best. So they always said to us that each of you have special talents, and you have a responsibility to discover these special talents for yourself.
You and your sisters all graduated from the celebrated university in America, and you are even the first Asia-Pacific and American woman to be appointed in the president's cabinet in American history. So I think your parents must be very proud of that.
Not necessarily. I mean, they're proud of all of their daughters. So they have been wonderful parents who spent a great deal of time with their children.
Is there anything else for your family education?
I think my parents always emphasized that it's very important to contribute to society, to be a good person. So they never emphasized material wealth or fame. These are fleeting. They're not real. You know, they emphasized the real treasures of life, like family, friends, love, leading a good life, contributing to society.
It is said in the inauguration ceremony of the President George W. Bush, you are served to sit between the president and the vice president, which show great honor and respect to you. So your father was very excited, even with tears. Is that true?
Well, my father and my mother were with me because they were part of the inaugural ceremonies as well. You know, after all, if we have good times, what better time is it to share with our loved ones? Let me say that over again. When we have good times, it's important to share it with our family and our loved ones. So for all the important events in my life, my family has always been there to celebrate and enjoy it with me.
Do you think the Chinese cultural background to some degree influenced you so much as a politician in America?
My family upbringing certainly helped me in those careers because, again, my father always emphasized, you know, we must always be good people, 做好人是非常重要的. And secondly, to always contribute to society, to help other people.
从19世纪40、50年代，华人移民开始大批到美国西部淘金，现在已经有160年的历史。 在那个特殊的岁月里，美国常以各种理由进行排华行动。1882年，美国通过排华法案，不让中国劳工进入美国，并明令禁止华人通过规划取得美国国籍。一直到1943年12月27日，小罗斯福签署废除排华法案，臭名昭著的排华法案正式走入历史。没有人能够想到，120年后，美国华人从苦力到当上劳工部部长，走过了又是怎样一条漫长而又血泪斑斑的道路。
Now, when you first arrived in America, did you feel some discrimination against Chinese, and how did you deal with that and finally accepted by the mainstream society?
Well, number one, when we first came to America, there were not very many Asians in America. Asians comprised less than 1% of the entire American population. So it was very unusual to see other Asians. In fact, when I first arrived in America, I was in 3rd grade, and I missed seeing other Asians. And so I befriended a little Japanese girl because she looked like me.
Yeah.
And so we were good friends. But yes, of course there was discrimination. But because my family was so strong and my parents provided such a strong foundation and love, it didn't really affect me. I didn't really care. What I cared about most was to make my parents proud, to do better in life, and to bring honor to my family. And if I faced some difficulty, such as discrimination, I didn't care because I knew what my goals were. And so what other people may have thought was no matter to me. And I think that was very good. Now, of course, America's very different. There's so many more Asian Americans, and I think times are easier.
In 1983, you asked the White House Fellow selection. Now, what is the key to success?
I wasn't looking for success. I was just curious. You know, my parents always emphasized broadening our horizons, broadening our vistas. And they encouraged us to push, you know, our boundaries. And so I was very curious about the American government. I was an immigrant. I didn't understand American government. So I thought I would just try to understand and view it, learn about it from the inside. And that's how I got involved with the White House Fellowship Program.
Now, during your political career, President Ronald Reagan and George Bush give you a lot of support. Could you share some detailed stories with us?
Well, I was such a young staffer in President Reagan's administration, but there were people like Elizabeth Dole and others who noticed how hard I was working and how energetic I was and how devoted I was. And so they gave me an opportunity. And the same with President George W. Bush. I knew President George W. Bush because I worked with the son in the father's administration.
Well, when President George W. Bush asked you to be in his cabinet, you said no, but later you changed your mind. Why?
Well, he didn't ask me initially. I was initially, feelers were sent out, which I didn't realize at the time, but it's now evident that feelers were sent out to me to see whether I was interested in becoming the Secretary of Labor. And I had hoped that I would become the Secretary of Transportation because that was my background, my experience. And unfortunately for me at the time, that was not offered because the president, in our discussion, indicated to me he was going to offer transportation to me, Secretary of Transportation. But they wanted a Democrat in the administration. And so they were going to offer the Secretary of Energy to Norman Netta. But Norman Netta didn't want energy. He wanted transportation. So because they wanted a Democrat in the cabinet very badly, they gave Norman Netta transportation. So therefore, I was out of transportation. But in retrospect, you know, life works out in very interesting ways. I have loved being the Secretary of Labor, and it has been a great privilege to be able to serve the workforce of America. And so I'm very, very glad that I had the chance to serve as Secretary of Labor.
How do you describe George W. Bush as a president?
A very confident chief executive who gave a great deal of responsibility to his cabinet members. He chooses the best people that he could, and then he lets them run their departments. He's also a man who is a leader, who was very steadfast in his defense of America. After September 11th, 2001, we had a cabinet meeting, and he vowed to the cabinet that he would never let America be attacked again.
In your terms of office, you deal with a lot of tricky situations,
Yes.
such as 9/11, earthquake in California, and the Lockheed air crash. Now, what kind of challenge is that you may define?
I think in a crisis situation like that, it's very important to remain calm and to be able to collect as accurate information as possible. And in my experience, whenever there is a crisis, you never get totally accurate information. And so you have to receive the information and factor in a margin for error. And then also in a crisis, it's very important to communicate clearly and forcefully, to give people the confidence that someone competent is handling the crisis.
I heard that you were so sad to cry for crash. Is this the first time for you to cry for work?
I see no shame in crying, but I didn't cry then. I don't think so. Because I think sometimes, times change. 20 years ago, it was unacceptable for a woman to cry. It was viewed as weakness. Now, 20 years later, men cry on television. So times change. And as a leader, you have to project a sense of confidence, to inspire confidence in those who are listening. So I think in Lockerbie, I was very sad, especially when I was touring the huge warehouse in Lockerbie, Scotland, where the workers were gathering and reconstructing the airplane. And it was a huge cavernous warehouse. And they had a grid that was laid out. And each one of the passengers had a spot. And all the things that belonged to the passengers were collected in that one box. And there was a great sense of reverence that this was not just a collection of inanimate objects, but that these were real people whose lives had perished, and that we are handling their after effects, and we must do so with respect and reverence.
1981年，赵小兰和父母回到老家上海嘉定马路镇，捐款200万元修建了蚁人幼儿园。蚁人是赵小兰爷爷的名字。赵小兰8岁随父母移民美国，从一个英文字都不认识的小女孩，到领导17000多名员工的美国劳工部部长。有人评价她聪慧、勤奋、坚强，同时又不失温婉与孝顺。在她的身上，既具备了中华民族谦逊、勤奋的美德，又有着美国人竞争、宽容、诚实的优点。赵小兰平时喜欢打高尔夫球、骑马和溜冰，还弹得一手的好钢琴。赵小兰是赵家最后出嫁的女儿。1993年初，忙于事业的赵小兰与51岁的美国肯塔基州共和党籍参议员麦康奴成婚。那年，赵小兰40岁。
As traditional Chinese, did your parents care about your marriage?
I think they did, but they never said very much. I enjoy being with my parents. I used to go on family vacations with my parents until I was 39 years old. And I think they didn't mind having me with them either. But 没有缘分嘛，对不对？缘分很重要的。So I think it depends on 缘分。
Do you still remember how your husband proposed to you in your family?
Yes, he had to come and visit the whole family and meet everybody. So he was the first male that I ever brought home. I've never brought anybody else home. So when I told my parents that I was going to bring him home, they knew that it was something serious.
Now, what do you talk about most in your daily life?
Oh, well, we're like every other couple. You know, we talk about what we're doing, who's going to pick up dinner, who's going to take out the garbage, and how our schedule is going to coincide. So we're like every other couple.
I heard your husband is good at cooking, right?
Yes, he's very good.
Do you cook?
Actually, I do, but I don't tell him. So he can cook.
Now,
I'm also very handy around the house, as you have heard, because my father taught all of us. We're very handy around the house, but we don't tell our husbands that either.
You can tell us what kind of Chinese cuisine you can cook.
I can cook 蛋台.
蛋台.
I don't know the Chinese name. 宫保 is
鸡丁. Yeah.
还有各式各样的那个豆腐，对不对？还有有点牛肉啦，还可以做。
那
就是好像没有时间，因为中国菜的要切得好细，
费好多时间。
对。
那如果你们家务活在家里谁做的多一点？
还是我想是在家里的。
在家里的。
我们都会
一起做。
对，一起做的。我们都一起做的。
Today, two more American politicians with Chinese origin have entered the cabinet of President Obama. Does it indicate that the American politicians with Chinese origin play a more important role in an American political circle?
Well, I think these two gentlemen are also very accomplished. But of course, yes, as America becomes more diverse, there are going to be more African Americans. We have now an African American president, more Hispanic Americans, more Asian Americans. I hope that the two Chinese Americans who are in the cabinet, I hope that the two Chinese American cabinet officers will help America and this administration understand China better.
Now, what's the obstacles and the challenge for them, in your opinion?
Well, there are always challenges because East and West think so differently. But when I was in the cabinet, that's what my role was. That was how I viewed my role, is to be a bridge of understanding between East and West and to help America understand China and understand, some of the evolution of where China has been for 30 years, which is why my trip here in 1979 with my parents have been so helpful, because I have seen China change in the last 30 years. I have seen China change in the last 30 years. And I tell my American friends, China has changed so much more than America has changed in the last 30 years. And China will continue to change. So please continue to work with China. Be patient. They are changing as rapidly as they can within their constraints and within the psychological adaptability of the Chinese people. That's a big point.
Do you think one day there will be an American president with Chinese origin?
Of course.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Do you want to
Absolutely.
try? Do you want to try?
No, I was born over. No. I'm too modest, first of all. But also, an American president must be born in the United States. So I will give you a little question. In the State of the Union address, every year, there is one cabinet person who is sequestered in case the government falls. There can be continuity of government. So there's always one cabinet person who is selected to be absent so that in case anything happened, they can become the president. Guess who was never chosen to be that person?
It's quite difficult.
Me.
Really?
Yes, do you know why? Myself and Carlos Gutierrez and Mel Martinez, because we are not in the line of succession, because we are not born in the United States. So I tell my father and my mother, I say, every State of the Union address, you will always see me on camera, on television, because I will never be selected to be the person absent from the State of the Union.
最后还有一个问题，因为你是上海人，你会说上海话吗？
Hello, Zong'ening啊。
谢谢 ，Thank you very much，
谢谢。
谢谢。